So for episode 5, I want to make a announcement to the community that the upcoming book that I've been working on, The Night I Got Enlightened, is just about ready. Has about 120,000 words, so it's a decent sized book. It has 16 chapters and four appendices, and those appendices are the pretty much the final part. And a once through revision on my part, I've done about four chapters so far, including the introduction, so three chapters plus the introduction, and um, and then it's ready to be professionally edited and sent to a professional publishing house and get it out to people, start getting it out there. So I'm really excited about this, and this is a surprise episode. Um, where I will be sharing one of my favorite stories from the book, which is a section from chapter 7 about the time I tried MDMA. And it was the first time I left my body during this incarnation and flew. People call it astral travel, and there was a part of it that was astral travel, but it also went into some other realms as well. And well, you're about to hear the story. So, um, I'll just get into it. But I just want to say before I get started that I chose this story because it's one of the coolest stories. But there's a lot of great content in here. There's poetry, there's spiritual growth and ceremonies, traditional Lakota ceremonies. There's personal, intimate scenes. There's romance. There's some funny parts. There's really all kinds of content in here. But this is just as a special gift to you, and also because it's like bursting out of me and I feel the need, the excitement to share it, sort of to give me some life too. Kind of going through some hard times right now and feeling a little demotivated and a lack of confidence, which makes it hard to get motivated. So it's kind of a vicious cycle, but I know that things are gonna work out and I'm gonna break through somehow, and the community always is gonna come together, and we're always gonna to keep on fighting the good fight. So let's get into it. This is from chapter 7, and it starts with um, it starts with I had a friend who usually had access to some pretty interesting drugs, psychedelics, sacred plants as well. Which for me they were sacred plants. He wasn't, not for him so much, but he wasn't exactly a druggie either. He was somebody who had a mind and had a certain intention of trying to be a better person, a more wise person, which he certainly has become. He's a successful farmer now, and um, has him and his partner have been very, dear to me and my family for many, many years. They've come out to see the Sundance before, and they're good friends. Anyway, they this one year, back in our crazy youth, he gave me some MDMA, some Molly. And I had this conflict. I didn't really want to try it because I prefer all natural substances. Especially now, I strictly would consume natural substances. I don't consume man-made substances. I might consider LSD in certain circumstances, but I would certainly prefer first something that's natural. So anyway, I had also at this time this young friend. She was 17, and she came to see me a lot at night and hang out while I played guitar, and to talk to me about like uh, growing up and things that were, I guess, like her spiritual development. And she was going to college classes early. We were actually going to classes at the same school. At that time, she was studying anthropology, and she was interested in the whole Native American culture, which was one of the things that we talked about. And I was being trained at this time to be a medicine man by a medicine woman and a medicine man and several others in the community, different types of people. Um, so there are. At least, that's what it was for me. That's what it was, the understanding between us. I don't know, like, there might be people who are like, "Oh, you're not a medicine man. You can't be a medicine man," and that's fine. I'm not gonna like argue with them. But that's not the point anyway. So the she wanted Molly. She like was trying everything she could. I guess it was like a way to like establish some freedom by rebelling against her parents, sort of a deal. Something she felt like she needed to do. So she wanted this Molly, but there was no way I was going to give this to her, like, or be any have any part of her consuming any sort of substance that was illegal or questionable. I mean, whatsoever, like, no way at all. But this girl called me her guru, and she was like partly serious and partly joking, in case you're wondering. But anyway, so I had it there, and one night I'm like, I really kind of needed to like break through. It was almost Sundance time. I was going to be traveling back out um, with Mama, with my spiritual mother. It's a medicine woman, and she'd been talking about a lot of things lately, trying to share some spiritual insights with me that were just like way over my head, and I just wasn't seeing it, and I didn't have a lot of hope. And I looked over, I was like, well, pretty much like life provided me this strange opportunity to just have this substance right here, this Molly. Um, I'm just gonna take it. So I did it, and this is the section from the book called "Flying for the First Time and Seeing Creation at Work." So energy began rushing up and down my body after not so long, and also it felt like love was going to bust out of me. Like I was just gonna rip apart, and this love was just gonna come busting forth. And it seemed like I was becoming love. I was melting away, and at the same time what was reforming was love itself, but it looked like me, but it felt completely different, but it also was something familiar, like something I'd forgotten from a long time ago. And this MDMA experience would just be part of this quickening, which was what I was going through at that time through my training. Quickening, which is a period of rapid growth and learning in a spiritual process. I was being replaced, but at the same time it must have been the perspective of myself that was being cleared to actually see truly the way things actually are. Love, liquid existential love, all around and throughout. And but only if I could channel this energy right and not get swept away by the pleasure that it provoked. I grabbed a notebook and started writing um, furiously. I wrote, jotting down in live time the realizations the moment was allowing me to download. In this way, I documented the way that growth was occurring. But after about 45 minutes of this, it grew too intense and too tiring, and I wished to lower the revolutions a bit. So naturally, I turned to cannabis and filling that very special glass water pipe I had then, sitting down on the grass in the backyard of my parents' house. The idea was to relax the mind and body, which felt like it was working at first, but then as I stared intently at the full moon that appeared almost level with me from the hill on that our house is on, I left my body. I just slipped out, and I was confused at first, switching between my so-called physical body, like seeing through my eyes, and this new body, which was the same but made of that sort of electric bluish energy that could act solid but wasn't really solid, which I've explained at other points in this book. Why I said it that way, like that same electric bluish energy. It could not be acted upon as a solid, and it was very much like a ghost. But I'm not saying I believe in ghosts or anything like that. But surely the legs disappeared and were replaced by a genie-like tail. If I cease to focus on that part of me, the ground beneath uh, uh, if I, it would seem like a tail if I ceased to focus on the legs or the ground beneath them. And I was floating a good 10 feet off the ground when I stopped for a bit and looked around at my surroundings, and then down back at myself sitting on the ground. And this created an odd effect. The me on the ground was also watching, so it looked at me straight back at the spirit body me, and each of them saw themselves from inside my mind, which was somewhere else entirely, somewhere still somehow beyond what was happening, and seeing all of it from all angles that it wanted to see it from. And it wasn't like I was controlling it either. It was just doing it by itself. But it was me. But I got distracted from that line of thought of observing this happening as I considered the moon from this new vantage point of being above my body. Something I'd always wanted to do is to fly. Um, and instantly I was flying there. It only took a matter of seconds to arrive. I stood, in quotations, stood with that ghostly genie leg thing going on there. And it was quite dusty, and there was no sky or clouds like on Earth. Um, of course. And I looked again towards the stars with a vantage point never found on Earth. It was cold. There was nobody there, not a single living creature. Maybe a few cells worth of creature here or there, but I flew around the whole thing several times in different directions, always clockwise. There was nothing. It was time to fly on. I saw the sun and flew towards Venus first. Rust and blonde colored dust and rocky soil that seemed difficult to penetrate with conventional earthling means. It seemed it was a true crust, and it offered a beautiful view of the earth and stars out there. But there was nobody there, and I was searching for a sign. There were no beings to leave signs, to care to leave a sign there. There were no signs that there ever had been. So I flew back the other way. There was clearly nothing on Mercury, and I could see that already from where I was. So I went past the moon to Mars, and there was nobody. It was beautiful. There were interesting rock formations, and you know, certainly it seemed like there had been water there at some point. It seemed the water was still maybe present there somehow, like under the soil somehow, but like not as a single large body, but in some form. But it did not appear from the surface, and only from further away with the glow of the sun, the the reddish appearance. Mars would have this reddish appearance, but when you're actually there, it doesn't have this. It's like a light brown rust color, but it's pretty light, and it's only a bit darker than that of Venus, actually, which has a touch of gray in its overall complexion. But anyway, I flew on to Jupiter, and there was no hospitable place to land within that gassy mass. Yet I think I could have landed there. I think I could have landed on something, but it wasn't that necessary to do because there was clearly nobody there. Maybe I did fly through it. I don't know. I don't remember. But by the time I was done exploring Saturn in a matter of seconds, I knew what else would be found out there by the time I reached Pluto. You know, nice sights, but no people, no connection. It suddenly became apparent how important that was. Perhaps the vacuum of space was, in fact, the physical manifestation of the innermost effects of isolation and in some sense. At Saturn, as many people know, but that I discovered right then and there that night, there is a portal that has been constructed or opened or placed there somehow. Um, that's like the meeting point for the portal. It's like there's people who know about this somehow. It's very strange to me. I don't know a whole lot about that, but people know about this. And I was there. I'd never heard about this before, but there was a portal there. And it's even been spoken about in some capacity by investigative journalists and former heads and consultants of NASA and other investigators. And I went through that portal, and I can tell you that it had a delayed effect on me. I went through and I was in the same place, but everything had changed around me somehow. Like the light and the colors popped out more. Um, it was the beginning of hyperspace travel. But first, I was tuned I would say, and brought into the appropriate range of frequencies, of sensory frequencies, of light perspective to be able to pass through and still have an experience. This must have been like leaving that astral body and going into a higher form of a body, um, like a mental body. But this was the first time I traveled, and I was never taught about these things before, so I was trying to understand it in real time and then write about it, some 11, 12 years later, and now tell you about it. Um, and so I began to fly through the entire galaxy, which before would have, I was a fast flyer, but it would have been too slow still to fly through the whole galaxy. But now it was just a matter of a few moments, and there was nothing there, but I had to check, I guess. I had to check, um, to confirm or deny my suspicions, you know, out there through the Milky Way. And when I was ready, in spite of the lack of evidence to expand the search, I had, you know, wound up back at Saturn somehow, and I went through the portal again, the same portal, and this time it disappeared after I went through it. The first time it didn't. And now I flew even faster than before. So now it was, I would say, hyperspace. I went beyond the galaxy at a speed that made the passing stars seem like strobe lights or something. And to my dismay, there was, of course, nobody out there with whom to connect and escape from this competitive rat race of money and slavery, basically, and debt. There was nothing, there was no connection out there, is what I'm trying to say. This section is the eye of the creator, the eye of creator. But then things picked up again, and I had arrived at the end of the universe and gone back halfway again when the entire thing flipped as I thought how remarkable it was that I could fly so fast and without any space gear. My spirit body was fine. It could handle this without any problems. And now suddenly I was still in endless space right when I was about to have returned, but it was now space flying around me. And when I moved, space moved and not me. Um, when I stayed still, space moved in a different way, but it didn't stop. But when I moved to faster, I actually stayed still and space moved faster. And this continued, and soon I noticed what was happening. That here all of space, in quotations, meaning like physical phenomena of space, like stars, planets, and everything else like that, was coming from this one spot in front of me that was sort of a black hole. I don't know if it was a black hole like what astronomers talk about, but it was a black circle where everything was coming from that, and there was nothing behind that, but it was like two dimensional. It was like flat. It was just like coming out of, but like it wouldn't be possible to go around it and see what was projecting or what was holding it up or what it was in, because all of that sort of reality, all of the would require dimensions that are only real as a result of that projection. They're only part of that projection of whatever that black hole thing was. But soon it transformed into something else when I observed it closer, and I was really like praying in this time. Um, and I have a little battery thing going on. Okay, so I soon started to realize what was happening, and here all of space was coming from this thing. But then it changed into a horizontal diamond shape, and I could see this like rippling movement, like shimmering of reality going into and emerging from a single point in of a few yards in diameter. not only was reality emanating and expanding from this center of space and time, but it was also retracting into it. It was creation and destruction, and then recreation, which was, it was like transformation. And this was just constantly, this cycle is just happening. And this was everything. This is everything. This is happening right now. That's what this is. And it saw, but it did not react any differently to my presence. It seemed to be unconcerned, until it started to bring me into its midst, like a tractor beam on Star Trek or one of those shows or something. And at first, I was afraid that I would be churned into countless particles, and then like 3D printed out into space as like space dust or something. And as I went into it, I just relaxed eventually because I sort of recognized what was happening. I could feel it was benevolent. And I decided to trust this experience because I'd been following Creator and I trust Creator. And once inside, there was this brief moment of sensory overload of sorts where it was like so bright I couldn't see well enough to make out different parts around me. I couldn't see anything and I was like blinded and it was confusing. It was like a flashbang grenade or something, disorienting. But in a short while, I was conveyor belted back out of it into space again, just like brought back out perfectly in one piece. But I was still, in two different bodies, but with a new insight deeply interiorized about the underlying nature of our reality. And I flew back towards the portal and went through. Then back over Jupiter past Mars, which was close but not in a straight line, and home to Earth. Um, but first I had actually like stayed there for a while and asked, tried to ask this entity if it was real, what I was seeing, or to give me some kind of proof that it was real, something I could definitely bring back. And it sort of like laughed at me and said that then I hadn't understood that nothing is real. And if I can't understand that again, then all I need to do is sit a little while and remember and observe. And I would see the nature of everything is being destroyed, created, transformed, sustained all at once. Um, by like an intentional conscious, by it's not like an intentional conscious, by it is an intentional conscious, and it is a higher being. It is creator. And so I easily entered my body again, you know, back over Jupiter, past Mars. Uh, they weren't a straight line exactly, but it was close. Just I got back to my body. I went in, and my body was just sitting there patiently on the grass, sitting cross-legged, serenely gazing up at the moon still. And then after a couple more puffs, I returned to the bedroom and continued writing. And I filled every page in that notebook with this new energy, this new confidence that had filled me upon being able to return with this vision, this ability to perceive. Um, it was mostly a deep acceptance of the way that I was. I had survived this, and I had accomplished this. I had found this and done it by myself. Nobody helped me. I guess God, Creator, helped me, of course. But uh, but it felt good. It definitely felt good. Doesn't feel like a bad thing to be helped by Creator, of course. So I was not afraid anymore to feel love and to express it. And before I had been afraid to express it and to be tender and to be sweet and to be vulnerable and to be open to life itself. And so that's why I was like turning off any sort of possible woman who might be interested in me, I was just like, if nothing else, that it was that energy that I had. And really, I was just a hopeless romantic wanting to fall in love and stay in love with somebody and have a relationship and live my life in basis of that, which is what I do today. Um, and I knew that the universe still loved me, even if I looked silly or I am silly and nothing would change. But I felt more at peace with my interior, and then I could focus on things that I needed to do and that I need to do in life, just as a person. So then later, over the next few months, I could sit calmly for a while and remember that merging with the diamond and see my surroundings dissolve into many diamonds until my entire view came into focus as a diamond shape, like my periphery vision as low and to the sides and as high as it can go is that same diamond shape. Um, so there's still a lot more to see for me to learn, of course. And at this point, it was either the next day or shortly after that when I saw Mama next. And this was only about a week before we would set off to travel in the 1998 Oldsmobile sedan that I purchased from a neighbor with my earnings from the summer job I had, or the winter job I had. And this meeting with Mama would be to organize some final details of the trip and to pray with her chanupa, her sacred pipe. And when I walked into the home of Mama, I remember I was brimming with excitement at my accomplishment. And Mom and I spoke about other topics at first, but then when she went upstairs to get her pipe bundle out, she walked upstairs, explained to me something about her pipe. But she did this thing where she kept talking when she was as she walked out of the room and walked to the steps and got on the stairwell and walked up the steps the whole time she's talking to me, and she goes upstairs and I can't hear a word she's saying, but she just keeps talking, and she goes into the some room where her pipe was. She comes back, she's still telling me the story. She hasn't stopped. And as she comes down the stairs very carefully, one step at a time, she'd step down with one foot and wait for the other foot to meet up with the first one before going down to the next step. Well, she carried this bundle. Um, and she was talking, now I could hear she was saying something about that the pipe did not exist or that it wasn't here. It wasn't here, meaning inside this bundle of blankets that she had and cloth until it was called for to pray or until it was time to pray. I can't remember exactly the phrasing she used. I wish I could. Um, but it existed, she said, in the void. I noticed that after she took off the white buffalo fur on the outside, it, there was the next layer was a red blanket that she said was Navajo. The Navajo people had given this blanket to her, and it was Navajo stitch, traditional, handmade, of course, and the traditional Native American stitch, which a lot of cultures use a version of, and it had diamonds. It was a typical diamond pattern across, had a border one on each extreme end of this cloth, of this blanket. Mama, I said, haven't I been there? I know what that symbol means, I said, pointing to the blanket. And Mama grinned, and she replied to me, yes, you have. And she kind of winked, and I hadn't told her about what happened, but since she is the entire universe, it seemed unnecessary to tell her. And then she pulled out her pipe, and we prayed.